Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Read With Me. Today the book which we all will be reading together, it's a different kind of book for sure. The name or the title of the book is Death, an inside story, a book for all those who shall die, written by Sadhguru. So let's start with the very first chapter entitled What is Death? Death is the most fundamental question, yet people can ignore it, avoid it, and just live on in their ignorance simply because all kinds of idiotic stories have been spread in the world in the name of religion. Death, the most fundamental question. Do you know you will die one day? Oh, I bless you with a long life, but anyway, you will die one day. We cannot be sure about other things in your life. We don't know if you will get married or not, or if you will get a job or not, if you will be successful or not. But this one thing is guaranteed in your life. You will go straight to your grave. One of the biggest human follies is to engage with death in the third person, as though it is an abstract event that happens to other people, not us. Do you know that about 160,000 people in the world who were alive yesterday are not there today? Each second, two people die in the world. And one day it is going to happen to you and me too. It does not take enormous research or intelligence or even education to know this. This knowledge is inbuilt in every human being. Yet we think we have an unlimited lease of life. This situation is best expressed in the Indian epic Mahabharata. The five Pandava princes, who are the protagonists, are lost in the forests. Severely starved and purged, they scoured the nearby hills for water and food. They spot a lake, and as they try to drink from it, they are confronted by a yaksha, a celestial being, in the form of a white crane who insists they answer his question first. Refusing to be stopped by a mere bird, one by one they try to drink from the lake and drop dead. Only Yudhishthira, the eldest of them, is left. Always the humble and righteous one, Yudhishthira ignores his thirst and engages with the Yakasha, who fires a volley of questions about life at him. One of those questions being, what is the biggest wonder of life? Without hesitation, Yudhishthira famously answers, hundreds and thousands of living beings meet death at every moment, yet the foolish man thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. This is the biggest wonder of life. The Yaksha is pleased with this answer, so he allows him to drink from the lake and also restores the lives of his dead brothers. This happened 5,000 years ago, but the human psyche regarding death has changed very little since then. Death is a very fundamental question. Actually, death is closer to us than the statistics we read about it. Each moment, death is happening in us at the organ and cellular levels. This is how, with just one look at your insides, your doctor knows how old you are. In fact, death began in us even before we were born. Only if you are ignorant and unaware does it seem like death will come to you someday later. If you are aware, you will see both life and death are happening every moment. If you as much as breathe a little more consciously, you will notice that with every inhalation there is life. With every exhalation there is death. Upon birth, the first thing that a child does is to inhale, to take in a gasp of air. And the last thing that you will do in your life is an exhalation. You exhale now, and if you do not take the next inhalation, you will be dead. If you do not get this, just do an exhalation. Hold your nose and do not do the next inhalation. Within a few moments, every cell in your body will start screaming for life. Life and death are happening all the time. They exist together inseparably in the same breath. This relationship goes even beyond the breath. Breath is only a supporting actor. The real process is of the life energy or prana that controls physical existence. With certain mastery over prana, one can exist beyond breath for substantial amounts of time. Breath is a bit more immediate in its requirement, but in the same category as food and water. Death is such a fundamental aspect because if one small thing happens, you can be gone tomorrow morning. Why tomorrow morning? One small thing now and you could be off the next moment. If you were like any other creature, maybe you would be unable to think about all this. But once one is endowed with human intelligence, how can you just ignore such a significant aspect of your life? How can you avoid it and live on as if you are going to be here forever? How is it that after living here for millions of years of life, human beings still don't know a damn thing about death? Well, they know nothing about life either. We know all the happenings about life, but what do you know about life as such? Fundamentally, this situation has come about because you have lost perspective as to who you are in this universe. If this solar system in which we are evaporates tomorrow morning, no one will even notice it in this cosmos. It is that small, just a speck. In this speck of a solar system, planet Earth is a microspeck. In that microspeck, the city you live in is a super microspeck. In that, you are a big man. This is a serious problem. When you have completely lost perspective as to who you are, how do you think you will grasp anything about the nature of life or death? One reason people can ignore death and continue to live on in their ignorance is simply that the religions of the world have spread all kinds of idiotic stories about life and death. They created some silly childish explanations of everything. How was I born? The stork brought you. Where are you going to be? To heaven. This explanation is very simple but absurd. At least they could have chosen a more efficient mode of transport than a stork. Storks migrate only in a particular season, so all the children should have been born in that season alone, not during other times. Moreover, if people are so sure that they are going to heaven after they die, I ask them, why are you delaying your departure then? Why not go right now? All these silly stories have snuffed out the basic human curiosity about life and death. Otherwise, sheer curiosity, if not the pain and suffering of life, would have strongly propelled many people to seek answers to this fundamental question. Mortal nature. People always think that reminding themselves of God will make them spiritual. Not at all. If you keep thinking or believing in God, you will not do your job properly, but you think you will produce good results. You will not study for your exam and you think you will be first in the class because of your prayer. Such people become more brazen than others about life because now they have God's support. Always, people who believe that God is with them have done the most violent things on the planet. God is with me gives you a new confidence, which is very dangerous. If you think of God this way, you will not become spiritual. You could actually become very brazen and stupid. Once it happened, there were two young boys, very energetic boys in a neighborhood. Usually, when young boys are very energetic, they are in constant trouble. The same happened with these boys also. Their parents were very embarrassed by them because the entire community was discussing their children. So, not knowing what to do, they decided to take them to the local parish priest to correct them. Because the boys would be too strong to handle together, the parents decided to take them to the priest separately. They took the younger boy first, made him sit down in the priest's office, and left. The priest walked in with his long robes and walked up and down the room a few times with a grave face. The boy sat there, his eyeballs going the ping pong act. As he walked up and down, the priest worked out a strategy. He thought, if I remind this boy that God is within him, all his mischief will go. So he dramatically stopped mid stride and with a booming voice asked the boy, "Where is God?" The boy looked bewildered. He started looking all round because he thought God must be somewhere in the priest's office. The priest saw that the boy was not getting the point, thinking that he should give him a little clue that God is within him. The priest leaned on the table and pointing at the little boy boomed again, "Where is God?" The boy looked even more bewildered and looked under the table. The priest saw that the boy was still not getting it, so he walked around, come close to him, and tapping on the little boy's chest, boomed again, "Where is God?" The boy now got up and bolted out of the room. He ran to where his elder brother was and said, "We are in real trouble." The elder brother asked, "Why? What happened?" He said, "They have lost their God and they think we did it." Thinking about God, you will think that you can do idiotic things in your life and with a prayer everything will be fixed. This is not becoming spiritual. It is only when you become conscious that you will also die, you will turn spiritual. Only when this awareness of mortality seeps into you, you will turn inwards. The moment you address the mortal nature of who you are, you will also want to know what the source of this life is. You will develop the longing to know what this is all about and what is beyond this thing. It will become a natural quest. That is a spiritual process. No one would seek spirituality if they did not know that they would die. When you are young, you think you are immortal. Slowly, as you get older, at least your body definitely reminds you that you are mortal. And when you are faced with death or the death of someone dear to you, you will surely begin to wonder what all this is about. If you are aware of the mortal nature of your life, where is the time to get angry with someone or to quarrel with someone or to do anything stupid in life? Once you come to terms with death and you are conscious that you will die, you will want to make every moment of your life as beautiful as possible. Those who are constantly aware of the mortal and fragile nature of existence do not want to miss even a single moment. They will naturally be aware. They cannot take anything for granted. They will live. They will live very purposefully. Only people who believe they are immortal can fight and fight to death. In the Indian tradition, cremation grounds are always held to be very sacred. When someone dies, even if it is someone that you do not know, it hits you somewhere. In any genuine spiritual practice, there is always a smell of death. If you go deep enough into it, it will remind you that you are mortal. Whatever sadhana like we have been teaching you, whether it is Shunya or Shakti Chalana or Sambhavi Mahamudra, even more so with Samyanya, essentially there is a tinge of death in it. If there is no tinge of death in it, there is no spirituality. It is just entertainment. If someone taught you a superficial lala practice, it may make you feel good, but there is nothing more to it. Traditionally, every yogi started his spiritual pursuit in the cremation grounds. In fact, many masters have used this as a spiritual process. Gautama, the Buddha, made it compulsory for his monks. Before he initiated anyone who came to him, he asked them to go and sit in the busiest cremation ground for 3 months, just watching the corpse burning. Even today, if you go to Manikarnika Ghat in Varanasi, A minimum of half dozen bodies will be burning there at any given time, and it is handled like a normal business, very casually. These days, there is not enough time for them to fully burn the body, because even before one body is fully burned, the next body has already come. So they throw this half burned body into the river. It is actually very good for you to see that this is how people are going to treat you also one day. When I was young, I had no knowledge of all this, but from the age of 8 to 17, I happened to spend an enormous amount of time in the cremation ground. It simply intrigued me. Everyone talked about so many eerie things happening there. I had heard stories that spirits hang upside down from trees. I wanted to see these things for myself. So I spent many days and nights in the cremation grounds. There was one very close to our home and another at the foothills of Chamundi Hills. The one at Chamundi Hills was very busy. Anytime you went there, there would be at least 4 or 5 bodies burning. Whenever I went trekking, I spent the nights there because the hill would be cold, but here there was a fire burning all the time. So I would sit by the fire and simply watch the burning. There was also a lot of drama that used to happen around the pyre. Usually, when people come with the body to the cremation ground, they are all crying like they have lost everything in life and all that. Then they set fire to the body. They stay there for half an hour or 45 minutes and then they leave. The fire is still burning, but they leave. Probably they have other business to attend to, but I would sit there watching. If you have carefully observed a body being burned on a pyre, the first thing that burns up is the neck because it is narrow. When it happens, like unless they have made a large and proper arrangement of firewood, the half burned head invariably rolls off the pyre like a football. It looks a little airy, a head rolling off the pyre, probably because firewood is expensive or because they do not have sufficient experience in arranging a proper pyre. This used to happen often. It would happen after 3.5 to 4 hours of burning. By that time, no relatives would be present, so I would be the one to pick up the heads and put them back on the pyre. I spent many days and nights in the cremation grounds just sitting and looking and helping these bodies burn fully. It set forth a completely different kind of process in me. I know you would want to avoid this, but it is good to sit down and watch the bodies burning continuously. Living in the comfort of your house, it is very easy to think you are immortal. But when a body is burning in front of you, it is not very difficult to see that this could be you tomorrow. Mentally and emotionally, there may also be reactions, but the most important thing is that your body perceives life in its own way. The sight of another body burning deeply unsettles it. It brings a different kind of awareness and sense within you. Many things that you have imagined about yourself will all get burned in the cremation ground if you sit there and keep watching what happens. When you are watching the bodies burn, you should not think about it. Simply look at it. Just look at it and look at it and look at it. After some time, you will see it is just you. It is not any different. It is your own body. Once you can replace that body with yours and still sit there, there is a deep acceptance of death. This is not a psychological process. When your very body perceives the fragility of its existence, there is a very profound relief and acceptance. Once there is a deep acceptance of death, then life will happen to you in enormous proportions. It is only because you tried to keep death away, life has also stayed away from you. This is why almost every yogi spent a significant amount of time in the cremation grounds at some point or the other in his life. Now, exploring death. An incident occurred when I was still in school, which made me deeply intrigued by death. I was 13 at that time. I was a fairly unusual child in school, but usually no one dared to tease me because I would beat them up. But there was this girl named Shuchitra who was a little crazy, and for some reason she would go on teasing me, Jaggi the Great, Jaggi the Great. I was irritated, but I ignored it. Once after a school vacation, she did not come back to school. Every every day when her name was called during attendance, some of us would squeak out a female voice and try to answer her attendance for fun. This happened for a few days. Then this girl's brother, who was junior to us by 2 years in the same school, told us that his sister had died of pneumonia during the vacations. That really freaked me out, not because someone had died, but because someone who was alive and here with us had vanished just like that. I became deeply intrigued by this. This girl was my age, doing many things in class, and she was suddenly gone. They said she was dead, but I wanted to know where she could have gone. Until then, to me, it was only old people who died. But being of my age group, the girl had brought death to my doorstep. Now, it was no more a curiosity question, but a very existential one. I wanted to know, where the hell do people go when they die and what happens after death? I had already asked these questions to many people even before this incident occurred. I had also spent a lot of time in the cremation grounds in the own, but still I did not know what happened after death. So I thought I would undertake a journey to death myself and see what happens. My father is a physician, so he had a medicine cabinet at home. I knew there were a lot of medicines in it. Among them, I found a bottle of gardenial sodium. It is a kind of, like barbiturate that can put you to sleep. The bottle was supposed to contain 100 tablets, but when I took them out and counted, there were only 98. Someone had opened it and used up 2. I thought 98 tablets should be strong enough a dose to cause death. Next, I went through my cupboard. I had some money and lots of personal property like marbles, catapults, and a few bird pets, which are of great value for a young boy. I decided to give them all away because I was going to die anyway. Some things I gave to my brother, the rest I distributed among my close friends. I told them I was leaving. They all thought it was one big joke. Then one day I decided that I would do it that night. I did not eat my dinner that night because I knew if there was food in my stomach, these things may not work very well. I told my family I was not hungry and went to the terrace with the tablets. I popped in all the 98 pills and just went to sleep, hoping that I would know where all the dead people go. In the morning, they did everything to wake me up, but I would not wake up. Usually, it was always a little hard to wake me up in the mornings, but this time I just did not wake up at all. Then my father saw that I was limp. Everyone became terrified and took me to a hospital. They did a stomach wash, put me on oxygen and all that, but I did not wake up. For 3 days, I was lifeless and in a deep sleep. On the third day, I slowly came awake. Still lying down on the bed, I slowly opened my eyes. The first thing I saw were the rafters in the raptures in the ceiling above the bed. Immediately I recognized where I was. I had seen those rafters many times before when I had visited my father at the railway hospital where he worked. So there I was, lying in the bed in his hospital with all kinds of tubes sticking out of me. It was very frustrating because I had gone through all this trouble hoping to see where one goes after death, and all I see are the damn rafters at the railway hospital. That was a desperate attempt to know what happens after that, but I had learned nothing about it. The only consolation was that I learned that this was not the way to know. Later, I managed to bully my friends into returning most of the stuff I had distributed to them, and life carried on. Many years later, when I was a young man living life at my cocky best, a deep experience came unshaked that changed my perspective about life and death completely. On one warm September afternoon, I was just sitting alone on a rock in Chamundi Hills. I had my eyes open, not even closed, when something began to happen to me. Suddenly, what I thought all my life as me was all around. My inside had become the outside. I did not know which was me and which was not me. The air that I was breathing, the rock on which I was sitting, the atmosphere around me, everything had become me. It was crazy because what was happening was indescribable. what was me had become so enormous. It was everywhere. I thought this lasted a few minutes, but when I came back to my normal senses, the sun had set and it was dark. My eyes were open. I was fully aware, but what I had considered as myself until that moment had disappeared. From the time I was 8 years of age, I had not shed a single tear. But now, as I was sitting, tears were flowing to the point where my shirt was wet. I have always been peaceful and happy. That has never been an issue. But here I was, drenched with a completely new kind of like blissfulness. It was about 7:30 in the evening. About 4.5 hours had passed like this. When I went back home, this sort of experience became, like recurring. They became more and more frequent. For a period of time, it was a bit of a war between a phenomenal experience with a flood of memory and my super smart intellect. The intellect struggled, it would not give in. The only thing that my mind could tell me is that I was losing my balance. But the experience was so beautiful and I did not want to lose it. It was absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, somewhere I was thinking this could be some kind of madness going on because it was too good to be real. Question about death did not even come into the picture because life was happening in such proportion. But this experience made me realize that people don't die. They may have disappeared from your perception, but they don't die. They live on. I was flooded with lifetimes of memories and experiences that made me realize that the past few lifetimes for me were about the same work in the same place and to some extent with the same people. It is the understanding of life and death that has shaped my life since then. In a way, death is a fiction created by ignorant people. Death is the creation of the unaware because if you are aware, it is life and life alone, moving from one dimension of existence to another. Is death a calamity? People think that death is a tragedy. It is not. People living their entire lives without experiencing life is a tragedy. If you die, there is really no tragedy. That is the end of whatever problems you are experiencing in life. But if you are alive and not experiencing life in its totality, there is a true tragedy. This is expressed very beautifully in a Sanskrit verse. It says, Janamam Sukhadam Maranam Karunam. Janamam means birth or life. It says life is a pleasure or joy. This is so. If you learn to handle your body and mind properly, your experience of life will be a pleasure or joy. But maranam or death is karunam or compassion. Death is compassion because it relieves you. Right now, people have a distorted orientation of life. They don't want to die. They don't realize that if you were ever condemned to become immortal or if death were taken away from you, it would be the most horrible thing to happen to you. However, beautiful your life becomes if death comes at the right time to you, you are very fortunate. If it comes late, if life stretches itself beyond a certain point, that will be the worst kind of suffering. Then you will find that when death comes, it will be a great relief. Life needs a certain amount of tension to keep it going, but in death there is relaxation. In fact, death is the highest relaxation. However, if you also know the relaxation of death when you are alive, then life becomes an utterly effortless process. If we look at life and death as a happening in terms of your experience, your inhalation is life and your exhalation is death. You can experiment with this. Take one big inhalation and see how your body and your mind are. Now do one big exhalation and see how your body and mind are. Which do you find is more relaxing? In fact, whenever tension builds up in you, the natural mechanism in the body wants to exhale. This is what you call a shy. It exhales you a little bit. Life needs a certain tension, otherwise, you cannot keep it going. Death is utter relaxation. This is how it would have naturally been if your mind had not banished death as evil. If your traditions and cultures had not taught you that death is evil or a calamity that should be avoided, believe me, you would breathe in a completely different way. If you observe people around you right now, you will see that for almost 99% of the people, their exhalation is never complete. Their mind has rejected death, so their exhalation will not happen totally. They will inhale, but exhalation does not happen totally. This is one of the reasons why over some time you build up so much tension within the system that it is reaching a breaking point, both mentally and physiologically. The greatest calamity of the human mind is that it is against death. The moment you reject death, you also reject life. You think life is right and death is wrong. It is not so. Life is what it is only because death is. A river always happens between two banks. But you are standing on the right bank and say, I don't like the left bank, it should disappear. If the left bank disappears, the river also will disappear. The right bank also will disappear. If the right bank has to be there, the left bank also has to be there. It is like, could there be light without darkness? One who does not embrace death will not know life at all. If you sit here saying, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, all that will happen is you will not leave. You will anyway die, but by denying death, you will not leave well until then either. If you are afraid of death, you will only avoid life. You cannot avoid death. Even now, in some cultures, death is held as something that is to be celebrated, not mourned. After all, from somewhere you got released into this planet within this atmospheric space. Within that, however large a space you occupy, it is still a small prison. But death is an endless possibility. So there must be much more joy, much more of a sense of excitement about this than this than birth. For someone who is aware of this possibility, there is no such thing as life and death. Life is death and death is life. They are not different. Death is in fact life in a very intense form. People who have experienced moments of great danger in their life clearly knows this. It once happened. Two old men met in a tiny little town in Indiana, USA, in a local bar, and both of them were sitting grumpily at two different tables and drinking. Then one guy looked at the other and saw a birthmark on the other person's temple. So he walked up to him and said, Hey, is that you, Joshua? Yeah, who are you? Don't you recognize me? I am Mark. We were in the war together. He said, Oh my God, and they lit up suddenly. They were together in World War II, and it had been 50 years since then. So they sat down at one table and started drinking, talking, and eating. They had seen about 40 minutes of action in those treacherous trenches of World War II in Europe, 40 minutes of blitz. They talked about those 40 minutes in so many vivid ways for over 2 hours. After they were done with all this talk, one guy asked the other, What have you been doing since then? He said, I have just been a salesman. 40 minutes of war. They spoke for 2 hours with great excitement, but 50 years of life after that were just summed up as, I have just been a salesman. That is how it happens. Moments of danger are moments when you experience both life and death together at the same time. These are the moments you realize that life and death are here at the same time. They are not two separate things. They are one inside the other. Life is all packed like this. The creation and the creator, life and death are all packed one inside the other. It takes attention, a lot of attention to see it. Otherwise, one just leaves on the surface half alive. If you don't know life and death at the same time, you will know only one half of life. Being half alive is a torture always. If you want to live as a full life, you should look at your mortal nature every day. Not only when you are beyond a certain age. Every day of your life, you need to be aware that you are mortal. It is not that I want to die today, but if I do, it is all right with me. I will do everything to protect myself, to nurture myself, to take care of myself. But if I have to die today, it is okay with me. Only then can I step out and leave. Otherwise, I cannot leave. Stop inviting death. If avoiding death is avoiding life, dodging life is inviting death. For most people, Sorry for the noise. For most people, if life becomes unpleasant or burdensome, then knowingly or unknowingly they start dodging life. Once you start dodging life, you are inevitably inviting death. There is no better method in the world to dodge life except to invite death. Either you do it consciously or you do it unconsciously. One major contribution to the multiple complex ailments that you see on the planet these days is that people are trying to dodge life and in the process are inviting death. The body is only cooperating with this. The body is just fulfilling your desire to invite death. Ask and it shall happen. People are trying to avoid life because they think it is unsafe. You should know that the only safe place on the planet is your grave. Nothing happens there. There is no safety in life itself. Like I said earlier, tomorrow morning you may be dead no matter how much security you create for yourself. I am not wishing you this, but it does not matter how healthy you are, how well you are right now. Tomorrow you may be dead. It is a real possibility. So there is no such thing as security in this life. The moment you start seeking security, naturally you become death oriented. Unknowingly you will seek death. In India, it is a tradition that whenever you see a sage or a saint, you should not miss the opportunity to get their blessing. So many times people come to me and say, Sadhguru, please bless me that nothing should happen to me. Really, what kind of blessing is this? My blessing is that let everything happen to you. Let everything that is life happen to you. Have you come here to avoid life or to experience life? If you want to avoid life, I have better technology than inner engineering. If you want to avoid life, all it takes is 2 meters of rope to hang yourself from the ceiling. And it is not expensive either. I am talking of efficiency. When alive, to try to avoid life is very negative. Our aliveness is a very brief happening, but we shall be dead for a very long time. So taking one's life is not really an option. This happens by mistaking the psychological drama for the existential life. The moment you think of security, you are assisting death. I want you to know death does not need your assistance. Death is super efficient. On the other hand, life needs your assistance. If you notice, whatever you do with life, no matter how much you do with life, there is still something more you can do with it. Life needs all your attention and efforts. Death does not need your support. It will anyway happen. It will happen with absolute efficiency. There is no failure here, as all shall pass. People think nothing new should happen to them, but they want an exciting life. How is this possible? This is a no-win situation you are creating for yourself. What can happen to you at the most? At most, you will die. There is nothing more that can happen to you. And whatever happens in your life, you did not come here with an investment. You came empty-handed. You cannot lose in this life. See how wonderful it is. Whatever happens, you are still on the profit side. So what are you complaining about? This happened about 10 years ago. At that time, the stock market in India was going down. Some people in Mumbai brought a man to meet me. It seems he was initially worth about rupees 250 million. Then he took a beating in the stock market. In about 8 months' time, he was worth only about rupees 30 million. Now the man was broken, depressed, and wanting to commit suicide because he had only 30 million. He was in a bad state, so they wanted me to help him. I thought this was funny because for many Indians, 30 million rupees is more than heaven. If you give an option between heaven and rupees, 30 million, they will choose the 30 million. But this man is depressed and wants to commit suicide because he has only 30 million. This is not just about him. You are doing this to yourself all the time too. Let new things happen to you. If you create this kind of nothing should happen to me situation within yourself, you will become stagnant. Stagnation is death. In life does not move on. If life does not move on, if new possibilities don't arise within you, you are living dead. This is the reason that even when nothing has gone wrong with people's lives, you can see so many long faces on the street. For most of them, life has worked out far better than they ever imagined. Materially, we are all living much better than our fathers and grandfathers did. But still, there are these long faces on the street. This is happening not because something has gone wrong. This is because of stagnation. You cannot live with a stagnation because because that is like living death. Being living death is a fantastic experience, but to be death like when alive is horribly painful. If you are alive, it is wonderful. If you are dead, we are not bothered about you. There are too many dead people walking, which is why there is such misery on the planet. They were all bright and alive at one time. Now slowly they are half into the grave. Yes, with time the physical body will deplete. That is why, if only psychological and physiological processes are in your experience, it is only natural that with the passage of time you will deplete. Only if only if the fundamental life energy is in your experience, if the right things are done about the life process, then you will not deplete with age and rather become greatly enhanced. So it is only life which must be constantly cranked up. There is no need to invite or practice death, because death does not need your support. Thank you for listening. Soon I will be coming with the next chapter. Till then, stay happy and stay blessed. Thank you.